What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Awesome Curious, Distinct Awesome here, and today I'm actually going to read through all of the files that I didn't read through during my playthrough because some of them are kind of long, but I very much am an individual that likes trying to show all the content I have available to me if I can, so this episode is literally just going to be me reading the files that I didn't get to in my playthrough. So, I got my water at the ready. Pardon the voice if it gets a little scratchy because there's a lot of information here. But from what I remember, I read Irving's, I read the U8's, Tricell, and Excella's. So there's just a couple here that I need to read. So the one we're going to read first is the BSAA history. Following the annihilation of Raccoon City, Umbrella was hit hard with multiple lawsuits for their involvement in the incident, but there was an organization that was hit even harder by the fallout of that incident, the Global Pharmaceutical Consortium, an organization comprised of pharmaceutical companies from around the world. Umbrella's development of and experimentation with bioorganic weapons, or BOWs, along with the sale of those weapons on the black market, caused people to distrust the Global Pharmaceutical Consortium, and the fact that Umbrella was an executive board member only deepened their misgivings. If things had ended there, the consortium may have just escaped with a tarnished reputation. But in today's world, medicine is an integral part of almost all medical procedures. The public is also quite informed when it comes to which medication are trusted and which are not. If the population loses trust in the pharmaceutical company responsible for creating certain medications, it can quickly bankrupt said company. The Umbrella trials took a turn for the worse for the consortium when prosecutors presented evidence that incriminated many other pharmaceutical companies. Prosecutors showed that Umbrella acquired medicines and techniques developed by other companies and employed them in their own bioweapons research. They commissioned each of the respective companies to only partially develop certain medications so that they could not be traced to what was ultimately being developed. The responsible companies thus unwittingly contributed to the development of bioweapons. Until this development in the case, the consortium looked at the lawsuits as Umbrella's problem. Now the problem was thrust into their laps as well. The companies that were linked to Umbrella faced the possibility of sharing blame for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocent people, and if Umbrella lost the lawsuits, they would face bankruptcy as well. Even if Umbrella was found not guilty of any wrongdoing, the negative publicity would not only be disastrous for sales, but the governments of the world would revoke the company's permits to sell their products. Not having permission to distribute their products worldwide would effectively dismantle their businesses. The pharmaceutical companies realized they had no choice but to take drastic measures to counter their dismal prospects. The consortium decided to strike a deal with the prosecutors. They would put all their efforts into assisting with the case against Umbrella, even to the point of turning over an internal company documentation. The prosecutors in the case, being obsessed with seeing Umbrella fall, agreed to accept the help of the consortium's companies, and in return they would not pursue legal action against them. In 2003, Umbrella was found guilty on all charges. With its fall, the scandal that rocked the pharmaceutical industry to its core could finally be put to rest. But Umbrella's dismantlement led to an unforeseen situation. In the fallout of Umbrella's collapse, BOWs began to show up on the black market. The weapons wound up in the hands of terrorists, guerrilla fighters, and unstable state governments. Soon the threat of those BOWs began to be felt around the world. Faced with a new Umbrella-like crisis, the Global Pharmaceutical Consortium knew they would have to take immediate action. It was then that the Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance, BSAA, was formed to fight threats from BOWs. Upon its initial foundation, only 11 elite individuals were made part of the BSAA. Their job was limited to that of observers to armies and police units around the world that conducted counter-bioterrorism operations. Unfortunately, the world's bioterrorism problem was much bigger than anyone had anticipated, and so a new course of action was required to handle the problem. To that end, consideration was given to creating a team that could react instantly to threats, but the BSAA was still only a civilian-led organization. They could not operate freely in sovereign nations and thus were unable to conduct investigations, make pertinent arrests, or even use force when the situation dictated it. It was clear now that the threat of bioterrorism was now the entire world's problem, and something would have to be done. The BSAA was then reformed under the UN's jurisdiction. As a UN-controlled special forces team, the BSAA's acceptance by the UN's member states was taken as given. The truth of the matter was that only 70% of the member states would approve of BSAA activities on their soil, and the remainder of the states would only approve BSAA activities in their countries on a conditional basis. That is how the current incarnation of the BSAA was formed. The BSAA's headquarters was located in England, but any further details of the location were not released to the public. Since the BSAA team had to be able to be deployed within 12 hours, it was assumed that they were located near an airport hub or an airforce base. Some sources claim that the BSAA had bases in the area under their jurisdiction. The following is a list of areas under the jurisdiction of their respective BSAA branches. European headquarters, Europe and Western Russia. Middle East branch, the Middle East and part of Africa. North American branch, the entire North American continent. Chris Redfield is stationed there, or here. South American branch, the entire South American continent. West African branch, the western part of the African continent. Sheva Alomar is stationed here. East African branch, the eastern part of the African continent. Far East branch, eastern Russia and the countries east of India. Oceanian branch, Australia is the center of operations for Oceania. Antarctica, where Umbrella's Antarctic base was located, falls under the jurisdiction of the Oceanian branch. Each BSAA branch had a considerable number of people on their tactical teams, most of them coming from police, special forces, and militaries around the world. The support staff for the teams was also quite large, and they came mainly from government organizations in different countries. There were many groups of experts on the staff that provided technical, medical, physical, and mental support to the teams. The BSAA deployment teams were divided into two groups. The first group was the Special Operations Unit, SOU. The SOU were sanctioned to infiltrate an area, engage in combat, and subdue offenders. Teams are usually comprised of 12 members, and each team was divided into 3 4-man cells. A special feature of the SOU is the flexibility of its personnel during operations. In order to match the scale of an operation, cells from other teams are brought in on a regular basis. For one specific joint operation, there were 70 elite members working together. Dan DeChant is currently the leader of Alpha Team for this operation. The team is comprised of his own standard team along with cells from other teams. The designation Alpha Team will only be used for this operation. Reports indicate that because unknown BOWs are involved, the efficacy of the tactical team's methods for handling them may be low, and consideration has to be given to the strong points that raise their efficacy. Another key part of the BSAA is the Special Operations Agent, SOA. Usually they are referred to as just agents, and unlike the SOU, agents work alone. The agents are primarily involved in investigations and espionage activities, and as such, they are considered the eyes and ears of the BSAA. During certain operations, it may become difficult for tactical teams to penetrate to the front, so it is up to the agents to carry out the missions. During those types of missions, a 2-man cell is the basic deployment unit required to carry out the mission. Sometimes agents must go beyond the jurisdiction of a BSA branch to carry out their missions. Many of them are dispatched to areas with unlawful activities. This mission sees Agent Chris Redfield in that role. Agents who work alone are highly capable, and they rank higher than SOU members. However, agents are not chosen so much for their abilities or technical prowess, but for the psychological state and aptitude in handling situations. In actual skills and abilities, they may be outperformed by SOU members. The BSAA is a public organization with an international staff, but owing to the logistics of running such an organization, it is a well-known fact that most of their funding comes from the Global Pharmaceutical Consortium. While this relationship has been the target of much criticism, the consortium's funding removes the financial burden from participatory nations, and as such, any motivation to change the situation and incur unwanted expenses. As for the consortium, their sponsorship acts as a much-needed industry-wide PR service. So far, this partnership has been beneficial to all parties involved. On a final note, the 11 members who were part of the BSAA from the beginning are highly respected within the organization, and are known as the Original 11. The name comes from the original 7, who were the 7 astronauts selected for Project Mercury. One of these Original 11 is Chris Redfield. A number of other members of the Original 11 also work alongside many of the tactical teams. Now we're moving on to the Magini, because those are the people that we've been dealing with. Listed below is what is currently known regarding the Las Plagas parasite. Though only recently discovered, the parasite known as Las Plagas was sealed away under the family castle of Castilian Ramon Salazar for many generations. The parasite attaches itself to a human host and is assimilated by the central nervous system. Infected humans lose all rational thinking faculties and are wholly subject to control by another type of plaga known as a control plaga, usually another infected human. Hosts may lack rational thought function, but they still retain human-level intelligence, such as the ability to understand and communicate with each other. They can also use tools and are surprisingly crafty when working in groups against an enemy. Leon S. Kennedy documented his encounter with these infected humans in the Kennedy Report. In his report, they were referred to as ganados. The presence of Las Plagas in this mission has been confirmed. It is currently unknown how the parasites discovered in Europe came to be present in Africa. A known bioweapons smuggler, Ricardo Irving, is wanted for questioning regarding this matter. Ricardo Irving. Sounds very familiar. Oh, the butthead that's working for Wesker. Got it. He's the one that got the information to Wesker that Spencer's butler gave Ricardo information. This information was obtained by the BSAA's Alpha team at great personal risk to themselves. Their report indicated that a Las Plagas sample was extracted from Europe and has undergone both biological and genetic modification, creating a more effective and potentially dangerous biological weapon. This modified Las Plagas has been classified by researchers as Type 2 Plagas. The presence of the Type 2 Plagas has been confirmed to be present in Africa by various intel reports. Type 2's initial infection characteristics vary from the original parasite's infection. The Las Plagas discovered in Europe were injected into humans during the egg phase. They would then reach maturity within the host's body, at which point they would assume control of the host's central nervous system. With Type 2, infection occurs from a mature parasite. This requires it to enter the host orally, usually by being forced directly into the potential host's mouth. The observed result of this type of infection method is one of extreme muscular convulsions and uncontrollable body spasms. Also of note, whereas the original Las Plagas took anywhere from a few hours to a few days to assimilate a host, Type 2 requires almost zero maturation time. From this point alone, Type 2 is a much more efficient weapon. Infections of this type have already been witnessed by BSAA operatives currently stationed in the area. Type 2 takes over the central nervous system of infected humans and incapacitates normal rational thought faculties. The infected hosts become unwilling subjects to the ones that control them. However, to maximize their effectiveness as a weapon, the persons who command them do not need to possess a control plaga to do so. Wonder how they figure that out. Hosts retain their intelligence, and the abilities of the host are dependent on the abilities inherent in the human before infection. This is the same as with the original version of Las Plagas parasite. It has been speculated that to raise their proliferation as a weapon, the parasite has been altered so that its hosts will actively infect others in order to increase their numbers. According to intel reports, Type 2 hosts are apparently known as Majini to weapons dealers. This word comes from the local language meaning evil spirit. Because the codename Type 2 exists, it is presumed that there are subsequent numbered types, e.g. Type 3 and Type 4. No confirmation of this, however, has been acquired at this time, which we know there's a Type 3 because they had a note about it. Chris Redfield! Listed within this file is a general background information overview of BSAA agent Chris Redfield, as pieced together from various sources. The information listed here is neither complete nor should it be used as a psychological analysis of the subject. Chris Redfield began his military career in the United States Air Force, possessing a service record replete with both commendations and disciplinary actions. Commanding officers have described Chris as uncompromising, possessing unwavering dedication, and having a high level of adaptability. It was these traits that saw Chris earn his wings, but also these same traits that brought him into direct conflict with superiors. Unable to settle these differences, Chris retired from the United States Air Force. After retirement, Chris was scouted by Raccoon City's Special Forces as STARS because of his superior firearm and hand-to-hand combat skills, along with his qualifications as both fixed-wing aircraft and helicopter pilot. Joining the STARS team, Chris was designated as point man, PM, for Alpha Team. As PM, it was his duty to scout and secure positions ahead of the team. His duties required him not only to be a good shooter and fighter, but also be able to use a wide array of weaponry. It was in this area where he excelled, showing the ability to handle anything from small arms to large weapons and the flexibility to use them as the situation dictated. Chris's performance with STARS was exemplary. It appeared that he had finally found his niche, but fate had other plans in mind for Chris. Unbeknownst to him, the next chapter in his story was about to unfold on the fateful night in July 1998. The STARS Bravo team, responding to reports of disappearances in the surrounding areas of Raccoon City, abruptly went radio silent. Alpha Team was sent in to investigate. Shortly after their helicopter touched down, they were attacked by wild ravenous canines, known as the Bao Cerberus, and were forced to take refuge in a nearby mansion. The mansion was in reality the Arklay research facility for the pharmaceutical giant Umbrella. It was at this facility that they developed bioweapons and conducted uncounted illegal experiments. Here, Chris and his partner Jill Valentine were forced to combat numerous BOWs as part of an active tactical research plan devised by Albert Wesker. Wesker was the commanding officer of STARS and therefore Chris and Jill's superior. Though all his actions were done at the behest of the Umbrella Corporation, Wesker used his rank in STARS to manipulate Chris and Jill. Wesker unleashed several BOWs into the mansion in order to gather data for his own ends. This tragedy in the Arklay Mountains became known as the Mansion Incident. It ended with Chris and Jill destroying the creature known as Tyrant, the death of Wesker, and the destruction of the laboratory. Having survived the incident at the mansion, Chris attempted to notify the authorities regarding Umbrella's activities, but all his warnings were ignored due to Umbrella's powerful sway. Having exhausted this option, he attempted to notify the US government of the situation. This too, however, proved fruitless. He knew that taking on such a large corporate entity alone would not be easy, and might in fact prove fatal, but in the end he was left with no other choice. Thus, Chris continued his investigation on his own. Without informing his family of his intentions, he soon departed for Europe. That's why Claire is trying to find him in 2. Chris wanted to shield his family from any ill effects his investigation might incur, but ironically, he brought one of his family members into the fray. When Claire Redfield was unable to get in contact with her brother, she journeyed to Raccoon City to find him. Upon arrival in the city, she found the area awash in the terror brought on by the spread of the T-virus. In that land of death and confusion, Claire met Leon S. Kennedy, and together they were able to fight their way out of the city. After the Raccoon City ordeal, Claire flew to Paris to investigate Umbrella's activities in Europe, but she was captured and sent to Rockfort Island. When Chris learned from Leon what had happened to Claire, he made his way to Rockfort Island to free her. It was there that Chris was confronted with many harsh facts. Umbrella had a research facility in Antarctica. Alexia Ashford was still alive. There was a new virus called T. Veronica, and most surprisingly of all, Albert Wesker was still alive. The man behind the horror of the mansion incident, Chris's former commanding officer, somehow survived the destruction of the mansion. Once again, Chris was unwittingly thrust into one of Wesker's schemes, and he was forced to face the man whose destiny appeared to be intertwined with his own. Chris was easily overpowered by Wesker's inhuman strength, but luck was on Chris's side that day. In the ensuing conflagration that consumed the island, Chris and Wesker's conflict was put on hold for the time being. With his resolve strengthened, Chris determined that no matter at what personal cost to himself, Umbrella would fall. Fast forward to 2003. Chris is in the skies over Russia, his partner Jill Valentine by his side. At this point, Umbrella was in dire straits. In the wake of the destruction of Raccoon City, the company became embattled in litigation, and their stock prices plummeted. It was only a matter of time before Umbrella collapsed. It was during this time that Chris learned of Umbrella's plans to develop a new type of bow. Chris and Jill had obtained information and were headed to the Caucasus laboratory where the T-Alos plan was being conducted in secret. They were to rendezvous with an anti-bioterrorism unit and attack the location. Not long after this incident, the once seemingly untouchable Umbrella was officially no more. The seed that Umbrella sowed, however, would continue to reap tragedy for the world. Bows were no longer restricted to areas of conflict, but were now being used in terrorist attacks against innocent civilians. It was at this time that Chris and Jill joined the BSAA, a group dedicated to eliminating those bioweapons. The two of them traversed the world together, partners in the fight to bring bioterrorists to justice. The shadow of Umbrella still loomed large though, as they would soon discover. When Chris and Jill went to question Umbrella's founder, Oswald E. Spencer, about Wesker's whereabouts, they were greeted by the sight of Umbrella's founder lying crumpled on the floor, and the blood-stained figure of Wesker standing over him. This would be the third confrontation between Chris and Wesker. This time, the confrontation ended in tragedy, as Jill, seeing no other option, made the ultimate sacrifice to stop Wesker. With one last effort, she charged Wesker and threw both herself and him over the side of the cliff. The BSAA searched for Jill's body for 3 months, but no trace of her was ever found. After 3 months of searching with no success, Jill Valentine was officially declared dead by the BSAA. Now, no one knows what promises Chris made in front of Jill's empty grave, but following her loss, he redoubled his efforts to eradicate all bioorganic weapons wherever they may be. Initially stationed at BSAA's North American branch, His investigation soon took him around the world. He became involved in so many operations that he soon had more missions to his name than any other BSAA member. During one of his investigations, Chris learned of an upcoming bioweapons deal in Africa in connection with a man named Ricardo Irving. Irving's name has come up quite often of late in association with bioweapons smuggling. After informing the BSAA Africa branch about Irving, Chris urgently requested permission to participate in the operation to arrest Irving. As for the reasons he wished to participate in this mission, Chris would not comment. Whether he is withholding information or not is unclear. As one of the most respected BSAA agents, his presence in this operation greatly increases the chances of success, thus his request has been granted. Heck yeah, so we figure out why Chris is here. Sheva Alomar. Listed within this file is a general background information overview of BSAA agent Sheva Alomar. It's pieced together from various sources. The information listed here is neither complete nor should it be used as a psychological analysis of the subject. Sheva Alomar was born into an impoverished family situation in a small factory town situated in Africa, this particular town being home to Umbrella Plant 57. As with most factory towns, the plant was the lifeblood of the town, bringing in much-needed revenue and steady employment for its populace. Almost 80% of the town's adult population were employed at the factory in some facility, including Sheva's parents. While the pay was low by most nation standards, it provided a steady income for the townspeople and a happy childhood for Sheva. This happiness was short-lived, however. While only 8 years old, Sheva's peaceful life was brought to an abrupt end by the sound of sirens erupting from the factory. As the sirens pierced the air, an ominous plume of black smoke poured out of the factory. Even as a child, Sheva knew something was terribly wrong. With dread in her heart, she ran toward the factory. Arriving at the factory, she soon discovered the entrance blocked. In place of the kind old man who used to stand guard at the entrance, strange adults in protective suits were everywhere, their faces hidden by masks. Sheva could not understand what was happening. I realized years later that they were wearing anti-biohazard protective gear. They were part of Umbrella's special forces. She may have not understood the muffled voices emanating from beneath those masks at the time, but the assault rifles they leveled at her more than made their intentions understood. The country was not a very stable place to begin with, and near her town resided members of a large anti-government guerrilla army. Although only a child, Sheva knew all too well the violence that often accompanied those with guns. The adults in the village that remained were promptly executed by these gunmen. Sheva was spared this same fate thanks to the vigilance of a neighbor who was able to get her back to her parents' home unnoticed. Thus began the longest night of Sheva's life. Crippled by fear, she could only wait and pray for her parents' return. The night passed and a new day dawned, but still they did not return. As night on another day fell, she sensed a presence outside her home. Unable to contain her relief and joy, she ran to the door to greet her parents. As she swung the door open, crying aloud with joy, she was soon met with disappointment and confusion. For at the door were not her parents rushing to embrace her, but her uncle, with a look of shock and horror painted upon his face. His words crushed any hope she had left. "Your parents are dead. There was an accident at the factory." Taking anything of value left in the house, her uncle then took Sheva to live with his family, taking her away from the only home she had ever known. Her life with her uncle would be brief. Not only was her uncle's family extremely poor, but he also had 7 children of his own to care for. Even though Sheva was a blood relative, he probably never would have come for her if he hadn't thought he would receive financial compensation from the factory. That compensation never came. Umbrella never gave out any payments, and soon her aunt and uncle were unable to feed her. Life was hell for Sheva. Not only was she on the verge of starvation, she yearned to be with her parents again. In her grief, she became fixated on the notion that they were still alive. As the days passed, this belief grew so strong to the point where she could think of nothing else. She knew she had to find them. So one night, as the moon bathed the savannah in silver, Sheva ran away from her uncle's house and headed back to her hometown and the life that was stolen from her. The thought of her parents drove her on. But the expansive savannah is a harsh environment for one so young and small. During her second night, she began to feel the effects of malnutrition. Unable to find food, Sheva soon collapsed. A night in the savannah is not quite a quiet affair. The sounds of animals plodding along, geese howling at the moon, insects chirping and buzzing about, and the dry winds soughing through the grass. Sheva considered them all with wonder. She had grown up in a town and was unaccustomed to her new surroundings. Through the cacophony of strange noises, Sheva picked up a sound that was quite familiar to her. She heard the low rumbling of an engine and the sound of tires cracking over the dirt. A truck pulled up next to Sheva and a stranger got out of the passenger side and spoke to her. If she replied to him or not, she couldn't recall, but the man picked her up and placed her in the bed of the truck. The man that found Sheva was an anti-government guerrilla fighter who provided her with food, shelter, and a place to call home. Unfortunately for Sheva, this good turn was accompanied by some bad news. She was told that the incident at the Umbrella factory was not an accident, that the factory manufactured bioweapons and Umbrella was carrying out the final test on one of its newest weapons at the dilapidated factory. The regular employees who worked there were unaware of what Umbrella was actually creating, and they paid for it with their lives, including Sheva's mother and father. After concluding the test, Umbrella took measures to conceal the entire affair. With the assistance of the government's army, they destroyed the factory along with the entire town, effectively wiping the town Sheva had called home off the map. At this news, Sheva was filled with rage. She hated Umbrella and blamed them for her parents' death, and she hated the government for just rolling over at Umbrella's behest. It was at this moment she decided to join the guerrillas in their fight against the government. Sheva started out by doing laundry, cooking meals, and taking care of other chores. After only a few years with the guerrillas, she was given her first gun. She didn't like to talk about her time with the guerrillas. Perhaps the memories are too painful, or maybe she's too ashamed of what she did there. One of her main duties with the guerrillas was to go into town and purchase supplies for the group. For 7 long years, Sheva stayed with the guerrillas. By this time, she was a teenager, and she had spent most of her known life with the guerrillas. Perhaps due to her age, when she went into town, the townspeople never suspected her of being a guerrilla fighter. It could be for this very reason that she was the one they sent. It was on one of these occasions, while she was in town, that a man approached her. He looked like a local, but spoke with a strange foreign accent. Handing her a piece of paper and speaking in a hurried voice, he stated, "Read this. If you believe what it says, come to the church in the back alley in 2 hours." After speaking these words, he disappeared into the crowd as quickly as he had appeared. Sheva turned the paper over in her hand, and her eyes were drawn to one word: Umbrella. It was the same pharmaceutical company whose selfish aims took her parents from her. If that incident had never happened, perhaps her life would have been different. The message on the paper said that the guerrillas were planning on using bioweapons to conduct a large-scale terrorist attack that would overthrow the government. Umbrella was going to make a deal with the guerrillas to provide them with the bioweapons. The man wanted Sheva's help in stopping the deal from going through. At first, Sheva thought it was a government trap, but deep down she knew the note spoke the truth. When asked how she knew, she had this to say: "My country was strongly influenced by France, and many government officials spoke in a French patois. But the man was different. I couldn't place his accent at the time, but somehow I knew I could trust him." It's Josh, isn't it? Sheva followed her instincts. She went to the church and met 2 more men there. One of them had given her the note earlier. The other wore a suit with no tie and said that he was from the U.S. government. What the man in the suit wanted seemed straightforward enough: the apprehension of the representative from Umbrella. From what he said, this particular person held the key to causing an irreparable blow to Umbrella, but in order to arrest him, they needed Sheva's help. As long as they got their man, they wouldn't do anything to her or her fellow guerrillas. Even if they did not succeed in arresting the man in question, they promised not to turn her or her companions over to the authorities. The man in the suit's offer seemed credible, but could she betray those who had been like a family to her? The man seemed to understand Sheva's apprehension, so he asked her one simple question: "Don't you want to see Umbrella punished for what they've done?" Sheva quickly nodded her head. "That's why we selected you. But if you want to help us fight Umbrella, then you are going to have to leave your so-called friends. And then what? What's in it for me? Look around. You know these guerrillas you are with aren't doing this for some greater good. They'll do anything to topple the government, including things you know are wrong. Help us, and you can finally do some good for the people of your country. And what makes you think a 15-year-old girl can help? Someday, you'll learn that age matters very little. A person's life is not defined by age, but by the choices they make. You have the chance to fight for something here that goes beyond just you, something that affects the entire world. Can you really walk away when so much is at stake?" Sheva would never forget these words. 3 days later, the Special Forces team arrived at the location where the deal was taking place. Sheva had left the door to the building unlocked, and she wore a wire so the team on standby could hear what was taking place. The operation was a success. The target from Umbrella was quickly apprehended and taken away. Sheva and the guerrillas were taken to the American consulate, there to be released 2 days later with no charges pressed, just as promised. Recognizing Sheva's abilities, or perhaps moved by pity, the man in the suit offered Sheva the chance to start life anew in America. With nothing left in Africa for her, Sheva decided to take him up on his offer. Shortly after arriving in America, Sheva's high intelligence and drive quickly became apparent. She surpassed any and all expectations, even learning English to a native level in a mere 6 months. Within 2 years of arriving in the United States, she had enrolled at a university. After graduating with high honors from her university, her legal guardian, the man in the suit, suggested that she join the newly formed BSAA to help others as she had been helped. Umbrella had already been dismantled many years prior, but Sheva had not let go of her hatred toward them and all others like them. After completing basic training, she was assigned to the unit led by Josh Stone. There she trained with his unit for 8 months, learning everything she would need to know to survive in the field. After the completion of her training, she was handpicked to become a BSAA agent. She is currently involved in operations throughout the world. Heck yeah, Sheva! We read Ricardo, we didn't read the Nidapaya tribe. The Nidapaya reside in unique wooden structures in the wetlands. Their advanced architectural techniques are used throughout the world to repair and maintain many damaged ancient ruins. This is how the world at large knows of the Nidapaya. But the Nidapaya possess a secret that they do not wish to share with the rest of the world, that the ancient ruins of the Nidapaya kingdom reside beneath their land. In ancient times, the surrounding lands were all under the control of the sovereign Nidapaya kingdom, and the city of ruins was the seat of that monarch. Special attention should be given to the way the sovereign was chosen. While the Nidapaya did have a monarchy, the king was not decided by birthright, but by the abilities and qualities he displayed during a certain required ceremony. The ceremony employed a special plant that grew in the sun garden residing in the deepest area of the royal city. This plant was known as the Stairway to the Sun. The Stairway to the Sun was an extremely poisonous plant, and its effects were fatal if consumed, though some individuals possessed a natural resistance to the poison. The Nidapaya people believed that a man who could prevail against the poison was destined to become king. Vestiges of the ceremony are still carried out once a year by the Nidapaya for the continual peace of their ancestors' spirits. Even with a natural resistance, finding an individual that could survive ingestion of the powerful poison was a rarity. It is said by the Nidapaya people that one such man reigned as king for hundreds of years. Whether this legend has any validity to it cannot be ascertained at present. What is known is that this once flourishing kingdom fell into decline and was eventually abandoned by the Nidapaya people. It is not known what made the Nidapaya abandon their city for the wetlands. Any information regarding these matters comes from oral traditions and hearsay, which obviously calls into question the validity of the information. What is known, though, is that after leaving the city, the Nidapaya viewed it as a sacred ground and vowed to keep its existence hidden from outsiders. All Nidapaya males between the ages of 13 and 25 are required to spend 2 years in the city to guard and protect it. It is through their continued vigilance that this great city's existence has been kept undiscovered by the outside world. There was, however, one instance of outsiders discovering their secret city. In the 1960s, a corporation went into the sacred city to find the plant used in their ceremonies and take it by force. The Nidapaya fiercely resisted this incursion into their land. In times of peace, the Nidapaya are builders of great renown, but when the need for war arises, they can become stout warriors. This adaptability is the essence of the Nidapaya. Their physical prowess in battle was their greatest weapon, and they used it to fight bravely, but they were overwhelmed by the enemy's technological advantages. During this time, many of the Nidapaya youths consumed the plant in an effort to fight off the invaders. In the end, the Nidapaya were forced to cede the area to the sun garden beyond to the corporation's control. But the Nidapaya have not yet given up hope of one day reclaiming their sacred land and returning it to its former glory. Nice. So we read the U8, we read Tricell, we haven't read Jill's though. Jill Valentine! Lesson within this file is a general background, blah blah blah. Don't use it as a psychological analyst or, anything like that. For Jill Valentine. When a crisis situation arises, few soldiers excel to the level of Jill Valentine. She is proficient in the use of various firearms, is a master at lockpicking, and is skilled at the disposal of explosives. Jill's talents make her an integral component of any fighting force. Like Chris Redfield, Jill was a member of the STARS Alpha Team. She was also involved in the tragedy at the Arklay Research Facility, also known as the Mansion Incident. During the incident, Jill and Chris operated independently, but together discovered the truth behind the facility. They learned that Barry Burton was not really a traitor, but was being controlled by Albert Wesker, captain of the Alpha Team. In addition to Wesker's machinations, they also learned the source of the zombie outbreak was due to the release of the T-virus, and that Umbrella was more than just an ordinary pharmaceutical company. What Jill learned at the Arklay Research Facility would have profound repercussions on the rest of her life. Following their return from the mansion, Chris and Jill attempted to inform the authorities of Umbrella's activities. For all their good intentions, they were met with no movement towards any official investigation into the company. Fed up with the lack of response, the two took it upon themselves to investigate Umbrella. They concentrated their efforts on Umbrella's main base of operations in Europe. As a STARS member entrusted with protecting Raccoon City, Jill chose to remain in the city for the time being and investigate the Umbrella research facility there before rendezvousing with Chris in Europe. This decision led to her involvement in the Raccoon City incident. During her investigation, rodents infected with the T-virus from the Arklay research facility began to spread the virus into the city. The virus quickly spread, infecting a majority of the residents. Umbrella, the perpetrators behind this incident, reacted swiftly. Umbrella sent in the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service, UBCS, to handle the situation, and they also dispatched the bioweapon Nemesis T-type to take out any surviving STARS members, who Umbrella now considered a threat. Jill, attempting to escape from Raccoon City, all the while being hunted by the Nemesis T-type. During this time, she encountered a member of the UBCS team, Carlos Oliveira. Freaking love that man. Carlos claimed his team was on a rescue mission to save any survivors in Raccoon City. Having no reason to doubt that mission's purpose, he proposed to help Jill escape. Jill, on the other hand, had her doubts. However, the situation had reached critical proportions, and Jill did not have the luxury of time. The U.S. government was planning on containing the spread of the virus by launching a special missile strike on the city called Operations Bacillus Terminate. When Jill became infected with the T-virus as a result of Nemesis T-type, she despaired of ever being able to get out alive. Fortunately for her, Carlos was there to help. Carlos obtained a cure to the T-virus infection and gave it to Jill. After her recovery, she worked with Carlos and they successfully escaped from Raccoon City. In 2003, after Operation T-Alos, Jill and Chris became two of the original 11 founding members of the BSAA and joined them in their fight against bioweapons and bioterrorism around the world. Chris and Jill stopped bioweapons in Asia, destroyed bioweapon labs in South America, arrested smugglers in Europe, and patrolled the world in an attempt to stamp out all bioweapons. Throughout their activities, while they may have suspected the long fingers of Umbrella as being involved, they never had any conclusive proof. Those long fingers, however, would turn out to be connected to the hands of Umbrella's founder, Oswell E. Spencer. The pair received intel on Spencer's whereabouts and rushed off to arrest him, only to find their former captain and hated enemy, Albert Wesker. Seeing Spencer's crumpled corpse on the ground, the two changed their plans to arrest Wesker instead. In a 2-on-1 fight, Chris and Jill should have had the advantage, but Wesker's strength and agility were well beyond that of any normal human. For all their training, Jill and Chris were no match for Wesker. As Wesker was about to end Chris's life, Jill made the ultimate sacrifice. Lunging at Wesker, she threw both herself and him out of a window and over the side of a cliff. Chris could do nothing as he watched his partner fall to her death. BSAA launched a full-scale search operation, but neither Jill's body nor any of her personal effects were ever recovered. On November 23, 2006, Jill Valentine was officially declared dead, and her name was added to the list of BSAA members who died in the line of duty. But Jill's story did not end there. The fall did not kill Jill, nor Wesker. Though badly hurt and unconscious, Jill was saved by Wesker. After giving her the medical treatment she required, he placed her in a cryogenic sleep. Once the Ouroboros plan was finalized, Wesker intended to use her as the first test subject. This was Wesker's way of exacting his revenge. Fortunately for Jill, luck was on her side. The apparatus monitoring her vital signs detected some abnormalities. Something was happening inside Jill's body, and Wesker's curiosity was piqued. Further investigation showed that a mutated form of the T-virus was still inside her body. It was a remnant from her infection in Raccoon City. The cure she was given was supposed to have eradicated all traces of the virus in her body, but instead it caused the virus to go into a dormant state. Her extended period in a cryogenic sleep somehow reactivated the virus. Shortly after being reactivated, the T-virus completely disappeared from her body, but it left something else in its place. Wesker found that Jill's body was now contained powerful antibodies to the virus. All those years, the T-viruses inside her body forced it to develop a defense system that was nothing short of miraculous. This discovery would help further Wesker's ambitions. The development of the Ouroboros virus, the centerpiece of the Ouroboros plan, had proven to be quite difficult. The Ouroboros virus, developed from the progenitor flower, proved to be too poisonous to humans to be of much use. Instead of spurring the next step in human evolution, it only invited death. Wesker theorized that using Jill's antibodies could make the virus less poisonous. He kept Jill alive solely to produce antibodies for his research. Jill, who had reviled bioweapons and devoted her life to eradicating them, was ironically being used to develop the most terrible bioweapon of all. After much research and experimentation, Wesker finally perfected the Ouroboros virus. Jill's participation in its development meant she was no longer a suitable test subject. Pure and unadulterated antibodies with high resistance to the virus permeated her body. Wesker decided he could find a suitable use for her elsewhere. During the research into the progenitor virus, an ancillary chemical was discovered. The researchers referred to it simply as P30. When administered to test subjects, it would not only give them superhuman strength, but also render them highly susceptible to control. P30 was the ultimate performance enhancer. The aims of the Ouroboros plan were to create a new breed of humans, so P30's application in this plan was inconsequential. However, for the time being, it could be marketed as a product and garner additional funding. Research into creating the ultimate soldier who didn't resist orders was carried out simultaneously on Las Plagas and P30. Fortunately, the latter had a severe drawback. The effects of P30 would only last for a very short time. An injection of P30 was metabolized and expelled by the body at an expeditious rate, requiring re-administration of the drug at frequent intervals. This greatly lessened the viability of such a product as a long-term performance enhancer. The only counter to such a drawback was to attach a device to the subject that would continuously administer the drug. While P30's effects were brief, it was still a powerful and effective drug. The effects of continual administration were untested, so in order to research this aspect further, an administration device was attached to Jill. An external device was attached to Jill's chest that would continually administer the drug to her body. With her free will constantly being usurped, she remained a servant to Excella and Wesker until Chris and Sheva destroyed the administration device. Heck yeah. It's crazy to think that they could use Jill to create a vaccine for T-virus, though. So we've read Excella, but we haven't read Wesker. The Mansion Incident. The tragedy at Raccoon City, Rockford Island, Umbrella's Antarctic Research Facility, and the Umbrella Caucasus Research Facility in Russia. The kidnapping of the U.S. President's daughter. One man was involved either directly or indirectly with each and every one of these incidents, Albert Wesker. The motivation behind all of Wesker's actions can be found in this current incident in Africa. Wesker had already obtained samples of various organisms and viruses, including the T-virus, the G-virus, the T. Veronica virus, and Las Plagas. All of these were eagerly and enthusiastically received by Umbrella's former rival companies, who compensated him greatly for each. With wealth, power, and glory, Wesker appeared to have everything a person could ever want. Wesker, however, was not interested in material gains. An all too familiar sense of trepidation continued to gnaw at him. The source of this uneasiness being Umbrella's founder, Oswald E. Spencer. During his time at Umbrella, Wesker could never ascertain what Spencer's true intentions were. Spencer's extensive funding of bioresearch was unheard of in the field. The whole reason for producing bioweapons was that it could be done relatively inexpensively when combined with a normal weapons delivery system. Spencer's extreme investment in BOWs seemed unnecessary. Why would Spencerson need such BOWs in the first place? To find the answer to that question, Wesker joined Umbrella's information department. Even after the downfall of Umbrella, these doubts continued to haunt Wesker. To find the answers he needed, Wesker began to search out Spencer. The only problem was that even before Umbrella's dissolution, Spencer had removed himself from Umbrella's day-to-day operations. Wesker had to use every resource at his disposal, all his time, money, and connections. Eventually, he ascertained Spencer's long-hidden whereabouts. On the first night of autumn, as thunder and lightning raged in the skies above, Wesker arrived at the ancient castle in Europe where Spencer resided. When Wesker expected the old man to be surprised by his presence, but instead, the withered old eyes of Spencer lit up with dark delight as he spoke. "You're back." The words barely audible amidst his cough-racked laugh. If Wesker had his doubts about Spencer before, he didn't know what to make of him now. He only knew at that moment that this seemingly feeble old man had been in control of everything that had transpired at Umbrella. Even Wesker's own actions throughout the years had been controlled and manipulated by this decrepit old man. With this sudden realization, Wesker now knew the source of his anxiety for all those years. Appearing to read Wesker's thoughts, Spencer laid out everything to him. The development of bioorganic weapons was only a means of achieving his true goal, the forced evolution of mankind via viruses. It would be the end of the current form of humanity and the birth of a new superior human race. With this new race, he would build his utopia, with himself as a god on Earth. In order to realize his dream, he required 3 things. 1. The progenitor virus. Without this key component, his dreams would be no more than abstract ideas. Once he discovered the progenitor virus, he had the foundation on which all his subsequent plans would be built. 2. The Umbrella Corporation. The manufacture of bioweapons was the perfect method of conducting his research on the progenitor virus. Any profits gained through Umbrella's research were secondary to his true goal. The third thing Spencer needed in his grand vision was Wesker himself. Spencer knew what was required for his utopia. He also knew he would need a new human race. But what would that new breed of humans be like? The progenitor virus would spur natural selection upon the population. That was the fundamental premise behind Spencer's plan. But if the new breed of humans brought about by the selection process were unwilling to share in his vision, then there would be unwanted complications. This first stage of evolution would give the surviving humans increased strength and intelligence, but it would not affect a person's knowledge, logic, or general character. If any indolent or unsavory individuals survived to be a part of this new race, it would be a blight on Spencer's utopia. Spencer was not about to have his vision stained, so he enacted a plan to ensure that would not happen. This plan was called the Wesker Plan, which was named after the chief researcher at the time. According to this plan, hundreds of children born of parents of superior intellect from all nationalities would be collected. If their knowledge, logic, and self-will could not be altered by genetic manipulation, then Spencer himself would instill his values into these children by whatever means he deemed necessary. These children were all given the surname Wesker, and after completion of their indoctrination manipulation, they were placed into select-controlled environments in various locations around the world, ever under Umbrella's watchful eye. The children themselves were to be kept unaware they were being monitored. With Umbrella's concealed aid, they all received the best educations available in the fields they pursued. After a few years, one child who showed particular promise was sent to Umbrella's training facility in Raccoon City. Wesker's child's name was Albert. Spencer was quite pleased by all of Albert's actions, and if the other Wesker children were like him, Spencer would have nothing but quality individuals for his new race of humanity. Spencer then enacted the second phase of his plan. All the Wesker children would be administered an experimental virus. This virus was administered to screen out the more gifted of the Wesker children. Some took the virus on the recommendation of a friend. Others were given the virus as part of their medical treatment. Still, others had it forcibly administered to them. Albert Wesker was no different. His partner, William Birkin, gave him the experimental virus and he administered it to himself. The screening process turned out to be a little too selective. Most of the Wesker children died, leaving only a few survivors. Albert Wesker was one of those survivors, and he disappeared shortly after. Spencer was unconcerned by this development. There was a failsafe device attached to every Wesker, Spencer's existence. This was the discomfort Albert had felt throughout his life. All Wesker children were programmed to seek Spencer out, which manifested itself as a growing anxiety within each of the subjects. Just as Spencer had predicted, Albert soon came to him. Unfortunately, Spencer had made one miscalculation. His failsafe only worked for as long as it remained a mystery. As soon as the mystery was revealed, Wesker no longer had a need to restrain himself. All that was impeding Wesker was a feeble old man on death's doorstep. The right to be a god, the right is now mine. With these words, Wesker broke from the shackles that Spencer had laid on him. It was only random chance that brought his former subordinates Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine to Spencer's mansion at that exact time, but Wesker took it as a sign. The weak would always resist the will of the chosen. With renewed purpose, Wesker reflected on his own evolution and the evolution of the human race. After the incident in the Spencer estate, he went underground and used the news of his death to veil his activities. He had achieved his goal of obtaining the virus and capital he needed from his position at Umbrella. Next, he put all his efforts into bringing his Ouroboros plan to fruition, and thereby setting himself up as a god over the new generation of humanity. Heck yeah. Well, you're dead. Maybe. You might be in time. I don't know. But yeah, we read through everything. Holy crap, that was a lot. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. I hope you have a great next 24 hours. Take that as you may, and I hope to see you next time where we're going to start a new game now that we've officially finished 5. Yeah, thank you so much. Bye!